Okay, then I start. Hi everyone, thanks for joining. I wanted to actually start with a short video first before jumping into the presentation. So let's get it going. It's in German, by the way, sorry for that, but I can explain later on. In diesem Jahr, im Jahr 2022, sind wir ganz besonders stolz darauf, dass wir die Splash Awards auch ausrichten dürfen bei uns im Office in Hamburg. Und ich glaube, es wird eine ganz besondere Veranstaltung.
Und willkommen zu den Splash Awards 2022.
In diesem Jahr haben wir mehr als 35 nominierte Projekte hier und das ist richtig ein tolles Erfolg für Drupal in Deutschland und in Österreich.
Einige von euch
I'm really excited to be here tonight. You know, it's my first Splash Awards. I'm really intrigued to see what's going to happen tonight and, you know, who's going to be here and, you know, take part of this and kind of share with like-minded individuals.
Es war sehr schwierig, weil sehr viele Projekte wirklich gut waren. Viele Ansätze, die da waren einfach mega gut. Also das habe ich noch gar nicht gedacht oder auch andere Umsetzungen. Also ich war sehr schon begeistert und das war tatsächlich für mich dann so eine Ehre, der Jury zu sein, weil ich dadurch lernen konnte und quasi jetzt für die Zukunft.
Ich hoffe, wir sehen auch dich nächstes Jahr beim Splash Award und vielleicht reichst auch du ein Projekt ein.
Ich freue mich riesig auf Splash Awards im nächsten Jahr und wir sehen uns alle dort.
Maybe I just leave the video stop here. So yeah, we have a little background visual. So I would like to talk about the Splash Awards today. This was a video from the Splash Awards in 2022, taking place in Hamburg, actually in the office of Factorial. And what I want to talk about today is a couple of learnings that we made hosting those award ceremonies, organizing those award ceremonies for 6 years now. And maybe I can just give a quick introduction about myself. So my name is Niklas. I'm a marketing and community manager at Factorial. I'm living in Hamburg, Germany. And I'm quite late to the whole Drupal party because I started working with Drupal in 2020. And also Factorial is my first experience in the tech industry. Also, first time for me to participate in an open source community. And last but not least, it's my first time in Bulgaria. So a lot of first times for me. What is not a first time though, what is not a first time is me talking about Splash Awards on a Drupal camp. Sinduri can tell because I think she said already in 3 different sessions about it. So this is one of the projects that I participated in, the Splash Awards Germany and Austria. Also, I'm involved in the whole German website relaunch of the German Drupal website, the Drupal.de. And also I supported, for example, in the Drupal survey last year in translating and localizing it for the German market. So I also do a bunch of translation projects. So who has never heard about the Splash Awards before? Okay, maybe we can save some time by then skipping this one here. So the idea of the Splash Awards, maybe just like to phrase it in one sentence, is highlighting amazing web projects done with Drupal to gather leverage for companies to influence their future decisions regarding web solutions. Or maybe to put a little bit more simple, make Drupal more desirable for customers. And I think that is a very important thing because the more companies are willing to use Drupal for their systems, the bigger the market and the more necessity also is there to grow the community and hire new Drupal developers. So I think that, like, for this reason, the Splash Awards have been created in 2014 in the Netherlands. And what is quite nice is that the Splash Awards in Germany and Austria have already a very long tradition hosting those awards, because they started in 2017, and since then have been a very successful brand, because they are, in fact, the biggest Splash Award events in Europe. So although the idea came from the Netherlands, the consistency that we had in Germany so far in hosting those awards led to like a really, really big and cool event. And we are partnering up in like the German community with the Austrian community to kind of like host those awards together. And we have a growing number of submissions each year, which is also quite nice. And we are kind of like picking up on this idea from the Drupal camps and changing locations every year. So far, the Splash Awards have been already in Hamburg, in Munich, in Frankfurt, and last year in Mannheim. Always involving another local community. So far, not yet in Austria, but that will come soon, hopefully. So it was like a huge endeavor to bringing those two communities closer together. A couple of pictures about the Splash Awards and the recent and also a little bit more in the past award ceremonies that took place. So this one's from 2018. Then we had one completely virtual one in 2020, thanks to COVID, which is also why we kind of like took a break in 2021 and then started in 2022 again with a new episode of the awards. This one here in Hamburg and then last year in Mannheim. And one thing that is in particular interesting is that once in the past, in 2019 at DrupalCon Amsterdam, there was even an international Splash Awards event, which was quite nice because from the different local ones, the projects could also compete on a European level in this. And if you ask me personally, this would be also my long-term goal to kind of like bring this Drupal, the International Splash Awards back as part of the DrupalCon or maybe also as an individual event, I don't know. But this is kind of like my long-term goal to achieve, which is why I'm standing here talking about Splash Awards, trying to educate, trying to also motivate other countries to host their own version of it, and then kind of like getting the whole community growing. Yeah. One of the biggest learnings, I will come to like a bunch of learnings later again, but one of the biggest learnings that we had was that communication is key, because apparently when you don't take pictures or videos of something, it didn't happen. So for this reason, we, since I am involved in this, from the year 2022, I put a huge emphasis on marketing and on communication. So we had like a bunch of articles on the web, and also, of course, the social media coverage, which was really intense because all of the different companies that were participating were like promoting the awards, were promoting their wins, their second ranks, and their nominations, which led to like a massive impact on the digital channels. And also, when you think about it on a long-term perspective, the more awareness the event gets, the more submissions it receives, which leads to bigger events, which leads to more proud people, and that kind of like circles back to more awareness for the upcoming years. Right, but everyone has to start somewhere, and so did we in 2017. And we had to face some issues in the past where like certain companies were kind of like being accused of buying those awards because they participated every year with 3 projects, always won. And that is also one of the main concerns that I get when talking to people about the Splash Awards, because everyone, especially in the smaller countries, is a little bit afraid of this accusation. So what we needed to do in that situation was to really focus on transparency and also focus on the fact that, for example, jury members usually can't be part of any company that is also submitting a project, or if they are, then at least their vote doesn't count for the projects that their own company submitted. But there's like one detail to this statement that I think people need to be aware of in order to also kind of like get this accusation a little bit better sorted, because of course the Splash Awards started to become a very small thing, and the idea was to grow it, of course, but the people behind the Splash Awards, so the organizational committee, was basically consisting out of a lot of CEOs and managing partners from German Drupal agencies. What do all of them have in common? They don't have much time, which means when they start organizing Splash Awards, they are at first the only companies that actually know about this. And if they don't invest in marketing and communication, of course, the companies that submitting case studies are just a limited amount of companies. So this was actually this quote was like kind of my wake-up call to say, okay, whatever we do, we need to focus more on communication and on marketing in order to not be accused of this any longer. And it's quite interesting, since then a lot of companies that participated for the very first time, and there are new companies coming to the Splash Awards each year. Many of them are just winning right away with the project because they do amazing work, but since they never have heard about the Splash Awards in the first place, they of course also never submitted any project. Now there's one interesting detail and special detail about the German market and the German setup of Drupal organizations that I want to share, because it also highlights a little bit the difficulties that we faced in Germany in the whole organizational process, and that is that other than in other countries in Europe, the DA in Germany is kind of like splitted in two parts. So we have this official DA called the Drupal e.V., and then we have kind of a Drupal business DA that consists of those Drupal agencies that I mentioned. And since the Drupal organization, the Drupal e.V. is like kind of the gatekeeper for the whole like trademark and stuff in the German market, the Drupal business DA is kind of like taking steps and actions to actively promote Drupal in the German market. So the Splash Awards, and that's something that's very important, are not hosted by the official DA, they are hosted by the Drupal business DA. Right. Also, I wanted to show a couple of numbers to give you an idea, like what are we talking about when we talk about a big award event. So, for example, these numbers are from the year 2022, where we achieved 40 project submissions, around 20 companies participating in those awards, and we had an event with around 85 attendees on site. Of course, there needs to be mentioned that companies that submit a case in 1 year might not have another case for the next year. So numbers are going up, sometimes going down. It really depends on the specific year. And one thing that I think is also very important is that we made it actually possible to collect the case submissions for the Splash Awards as future case studies for the German Drupal Association. So I think usually in many countries, the DA kind of like struggles with maintaining the case studies and whether they are kind of like updated or not for their different websites and web appearances. And with this fact, we kind of like ensured a steady flow of new projects and references being used for the promotion of Drupal in Germany and Austria. Still, we are not where we want to be because, yes, we grew already a lot since we started this, but there are still many companies and many people from the community who not know about the Splash Awards, but also who are not participating for several reasons. And the market is actually quite big in comparison to what we get in terms of submissions. So while this is loading in the back very slowly, I want to give you like a little perspective on how Drupal is performing with the Drupal Splash Awards in comparison to like other digital awards in Germany. And there is, for example, one very let's say famous framework called Typo 3 that is has very big shares in the German market. And this takes ages, so maybe I jump to the next slide. So I talked about 40 submissions from the Splash Awards Germany and Austria. And if I only compare Splash Awards Germany and Austria number of submissions with the Typo 3 awards in Germany, not Germany and Austria, only Germany, they actually managed to get 230 submissions in 2022. So this kind of like gives us an idea like how far we are away from being a very, very well-known digital award, especially in the web development area. Because digital awards, they are all over the place. You cannot really escape from them, but digital awards that are dedicated to the usage of one specific framework are kind of rare, and this, again, kind of like highlights how much work there is still to be done. So the Splash Awards Germany Austria, although being a successful brand since 2017, still remain an underdog story to this day. But, and this is what I wanted to highlight, there are actually a lot more companies that participate in the Splash Awards and that exist in Germany. So I did some research and found out that around 250 companies in Germany state that they use Drupal in their web projects. Some of them that I got in touch with said they don't do it anymore, but only based on what you find on the internet and information. There are around 250 companies who have been working with Drupal in the past. And in Austria, I found out that around 30 companies exist that work with Drupal. And the interesting thing is, especially when you talk about digital agencies, a lot of them are not even aware of, or not even aware is the wrong word, but let's say they don't actively promote that they work with Drupal. So there's a lot going on also below the radar that highlights that there are more companies actually using Drupal. And one important thing here is also that when we talk about Splash Awards, usually people always only think about digital agencies, but there are also there's also the possibility that companies just submit their own website as a project for the Splash Awards. This happens not a lot, so we need to encourage that more, but that also drives up the numbers, of course, to more than 250 companies. So on the long-term perspective, please don't take pictures of this slide. We, of course, aim to kick off Typo 3 off the throne. And this is where I come to the learnings from the 6 years of organizing the Splash Awards. So it's kind of like all over the place, from more meta-level learnings, recommendations to really, really like nitty-gritty details. But I also summarized the learnings based on stuff that I am frequently asked when talking about the Splash Awards. So one of the biggest things is that many communities are afraid of the budget that needs to be invested in order to host an event like that and pull it off. And one of the biggest learnings that we had is when you don't have the financial stability to do that, that doesn't mean that you cannot host the Splash Awards at all, but it just means that, for example, there are possibilities to wiggle around the budget and cut chunks out of it by, for example, piggybacking on Drupal camps or other Drupal events. And this also happened in the past quite often, like in Spain, for example, they did that, where they just made the Splash Awards part of a Drupal camp as like an evening event. I mean, the budget or the event location is paid anyway, so why not just host the Splash Awards during the camp? Also, what we learned is involve companies, especially for the sponsoring and the communication part, because the communities are very, very well connected, and sometimes you reach certain companies only by letting Drupal companies promote the Splash Awards with like word of mouth. So the more you involve the companies, the more people you will reach and the more companies you will reach. I highlighted the invest in marketing, especially local marketing. I think that is not only something that the Splash Awards should do, but also the Drupal camps. Just a quick side info for that. I attended the Drupal camp in Spain last year, and there were around 330 attendees, which is like a massive number for a Drupal camp. And it took place in Sevilla, and you couldn't tell that this event is happening in Sevilla because there was no local marketing done. People in the streets had no idea that it's happening. Hotels had no idea that it's happening, and that is something that I think is quite frustrating, because that kind of resonates to a core problem that Drupal has by always fishing in their own pond. So I think especially highlighting local marketing should be an activity in order to also attract people outside from the community. Yeah, get jury members from outside the community, or at least from outside of the companies that are participating. Hashtag transparency, so I think that goes without saying. And one also very important aspect is offer a reduced pricing for smaller companies, because there are a lot of Drupal agencies with a very, very small team. And although the price of, in Germany at least, 250 euros for a submission is relatively cheap if you compare that to any other digital award where you easily pay 800 to 1,000 euros per submission. Nonetheless, we do this reduced pricing not only for smaller companies but also for NGOs, for example. And that helped us a lot in the past to gain additional or to receive additional submissions. So be a little flexible with the pricing, and try to reach as many people as possible. At the end, 10 submissions with 50 euros are more worth than 0 submissions with 250 euros. One other learning is that we have this, let's say, rule book coming from the Netherlands, from the original country that started kicking off the Splash Awards. But what we noticed was that, especially when you have a lot of submissions in just several categories and other categories having no submissions at all, it creates this kind of weird letting some company win because there was no competition thing. So for this reason, we decided to kind of move away from the official rulebook and stay a little bit flexible in coordinating the categories. So in some years we have 8 categories, in others where we have more submissions we maybe have 10. And we also stay a little bit flexible in reordering the submissions and reassigning them to other categories in order to assure a more general competition. What we learned recently after presenting the Splash Awards in a certain manner for a couple of years is that many people from the community wished to have a more deeper look into the winning projects, and that is something that we will definitely try out this year for the first time, because apparently only showing one slide with a visual of the digital product and then just basically highlighting the information that has been in the submission is something that people can read anywhere. So there's this extra, let's say, motivation of attending the in-person event by really offering a deep dive and sharing also learnings from the process. Yeah, give away more free tickets and more raffles in order to welcome more people to the event, because more people, more impact, more photos, of course, leads to more awareness. And what we also did was we gave the possibility to resubmit projects, although they have been nominated already, in order to secure that we have more submissions each year. And the only, let's say, boundary here is that the projects need to have some sort of update. And I think this is completely reasonable given the fact that a lot of Drupal agencies work with their clients for numerous years. So they stay the same they stay within the same ecosystem and the same product, and it would be boring to just resubmit this project every time. But what is there to be told is that when you work with a company for some years and you let's say, extend their digital ecosystem little by little, those extensions and updates can be used as a resubmission. And then last but not least, of course, educate and talk about the Splash Awards, which is what I'm doing right now. And one last thing maybe, because I got asked that a lot about the awards, because we are not using those like fluid drops anymore. We are now using like wooden pillars with the Splash Awards logo on it. The reason why we did that and why we moved away from the original trophies is that this one is fluid and a lot of attendees can't take it home in the plane. So it was actually a very practical reason to just move away from that and create something a little bit more not fluid. Right. One additional thing that we now do for 2 years is that we offer kind of like a complimentary event for the Splash Awards, because the Splash Awards usually just take place during the evening, and especially for people that have a far traveling distance, only appearing for a couple of hours might not be enough justification for them to attend, which is why we started kicking off a Drupal Business Day since 2022. And what that is basically a mini conference where we talk about business-related topics around Drupal, something that kind of falls short in Drupal camps, and also for a couple of years also at DrupalCon Europe. So with this additional offer, we try to gain more traction on decision makers and managing partners being there anyways, and then talking about business-related stuff, about processes, about certifications, about ways to promote Drupal as a solution in the market. So we made great success with that, and also we were a little bit like exploring different ways of doing this. In 2022, we did kind of like a roundtable format where just people were sitting down and were talking to topics that we kind of like introduced as potential ideas. And in last year, in 2023, we actually hosted the whole thing as a bar camp, which was quite nice because the effort to set it up was quite easy. Venue was already booked for the Splash Awards anyways. And all the topics that the people wanted to talk about were topics that they brought with them. So we had around 40 to 50 attendees. And yeah, the feedback that we received was very great. At the end of the day, what we need to have in mind is that the Splash Awards are an award from the community for the community, which is why we are taking the feedback very serious and trying to improve little by little in each year in order to really make it turn it into something that people actually want to attend. And this year, for example, we also followed our own advice that we give to other smaller communities by saying we are not hosting Splash Awards this year on the 7th of November in Berlin this time, but we are actually also hosting a Drupal camp around it to increase the offer. I hope I will have the possibility to talk about that in the closing session. And I think I just said something that is appearing here. Yes. So November 7th in Berlin, the Splash Awards edition number 7 from the Germany and Austrian community, complemented by Drupal Camp, blah, blah, blah. And submissions are still open for this year's Splash Awards until the 31st of July. Yeah, I talked about my initial long-term vision of hosting international Splash Awards at the DrupalCon, for example. And my roadmap kind of says that I am reaching out to a lot of different communities, trying to give them all the material information that they need in order to be independent in hosting their own awards. And so far, it has been quite nice. A lot of communities are considering using Splash Awards as a complementary event for the Drupal camps that they are planning. And the good thing is that the more people I talk to, the more people also talk to each other about it, which created a lot of fuss recently by just reaching out to different communities and their own, and also sharing knowledge and insights and challenges that they are facing while setting up this award ceremony. Yeah. So the key takeaways. Once again wrapped up. So, of course, everyone has to start somewhere. So we did start somewhere as well with a very, very small event, I think in a cafeteria in Munich that was part of a company called Burgas, which is like a big publishing company in Germany, who was very, very much invested in Drupal a couple of years ago. and there were like 30 people, I think, but it was an event, it was cool, and it created also a lot of awareness. So everyone has to start somewhere. Better host a small event than none at all. And then, of course, create some additional offering, like a Drupal camp, like a business day, in order to attract more people. Learn from other communities and look for support. There are Slack channels for the Splash Awards where you can just type in your questions, and where you can just ask anything that you need to know. Ask for feedback, yeah, and then of course be transparent in order to avoid accusations that we had in the early years of the awards. Lower the barriers for participation, for example, by being flexible with the pricing, or also, for example, by allowing resubmissions from projects that have been only nominated in recent years. Focus on marketing, really focus on marketing, because again, the more awareness you create, the more submissions you receive, the bigger the event gets, the better, and the more pictures you have, and the more proud people, and that circles back to the more awareness thingy. Make use of the Drupal cases and the Drupal submissions as we do in Germany by, for example, grabbing that extra opt-in to use those case studies also for your local DA communication activities. And last but not least, start early. We didn't follow that last advice for 5.5 years. So we always met end of July the first time, or end of June, setting up something for October or November. And then, of course, all the venues were already booked out, or it was just not a lot of time for the companies to submit the projects. We also every year ran into the big summer break, which also kind of like hindered companies to do the submissions because they were on vacation. So I want you to really remember this start early aspect of it, because it is just the core thing of everything. Yeah, if you need any more information, or do you want, like, if you want to follow up on recent updates and how it's going, and when the next Splash Awards take place, there are a couple of socials that you can follow. You can also join the Slack channel, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, we are very, very much excited to host the 7th edition of the Splash Awards, and of course also the camp that we will try to organize around it. Right, so thanks for your attention, and if you have any questions or ideas or doubts, please let me know.
So, questions?
Thanks for the excellent presentation. I want to ask how many people are involved in organizing the event, and how long does it take? What commitment does each person have towards the event?
Mm-hmm. So that's a tough one, I would say, because of course I would love to have more people involved to host it or to set it up. I would say it boils down to like 3 to 4 people actually setting it up. But the amount of effort that you need also depends a little bit on what you plan. Like, for example, if there's already a Drupal camp organizational committee that is doing the Drupal camp, and you have the possibility of joining that, a lot of the tasks, of course, will like not be needed. But I would say you can actually manage to do it with like 2 to 5 people, because the majority of the work, the submissions, will be done by the companies. The only thing that you need to do is talk to enough people and create awareness for it. And also maybe to give you a little bit of an overview how much the Splash Awards Germany and Austria costs each year, roughly. We have expenses of 10,000 to 12,000 each year for the event. And that really depends on whether you can do the event in someone's offices, or if you need to, of course, rent a venue. Because, yeah, that of course drives up the prices. But the more money you have, the more possibilities you have to do like ads, communicational activities, and stuff like that. So I would say if you count with around 8 to 10K for the first time, if you want to keep it small, that should definitely be, I think, reasonable.
And are you volunteers or are you getting sponsored by your companies to
In
help
my
in
case,
organizing?
we have at Factorial the so-called contribution days. So each employee gets around 80 hours per year to work on community projects. And since I'm not a developer, I'm having kind of like a hard time finding stuff to work on. So I fully dive in like events and stuff like that. So that's basically where I invest my contribution days in. But a lot of the other people are doing it just kind of like as a hobby. But yeah, since I worked my way into the committee and now took over a lot of different tasks, I would say like I also do the majority of the work and I can cover that with the contribution days.
Great. And one more question, if you don't mind. What about burnout? I mean, this is a problem that we've been having, the people that have been organizing stuff, community events around Drupal. So how do you deal around that? Do you face such a problem?
You said burnout, right?
Yeah, burnout.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not there yet. Good thing. And also, let's say when you are organizing events, the start usually is like very easygoing, and then like 2 weeks before, it's hell. But that also means that once the event is done, you're free for another 9 months before it starts again. So I didn't have to deal with that so far.
Right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Hi. Are there some shared resources like logos or branding that can be reused in different countries? Or?
Yes. You have a Drive folder with the official material from the Netherlands, and you are free to use exactly that. Since I'm new to the whole like Drupal thingy, when I joined the committee in 2022, my first approach was like, yeah, we need to create some custom design and blah, blah, blah. And then this year, Buddy from Onyx Internet told me like, everything is there, maybe we should use it. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. So we are now using it again as well, and there's official material that you can benefit of.
Any more questions? No?
Maybe one last thing that I forgot to say is that also a lot of communities are struggling hosting their own Splash Awards because they say my country is too small or my community is too small. And in that situation, of course, you can also think a little bit bigger by just joining forces with other countries, like we did with Austria. I was talking with one of the community members from the Greece community, for example, to kind of like plant the idea to do like a Splash Awards Balkan, and then join forces, or also Splash Awards Nordics if the Scandinavian countries are too small themselves. And I think there are a lot of ideas to collaborate, reduce efforts, and increase the impact. Just wanted to share that.
Actually, we had Splash Awards in Bulgaria a few years ago.
Oh, I didn't know.
But yeah, only a few websites applied for the contest, so each one basically took a prize from it. But actually, it was a nice ceremony.
I see. Yeah, I mean, like one crucial thing is also that, especially in the Eastern European countries, the communities are big, but all of the community members are working for international companies. So, for example, in Germany and Austria, we say that only German companies are allowed to participate. Switzerland, for example, does it a little bit different, which is also why we don't join forces together, because they, for example, also allow international companies to participate. And that could be an idea for the Eastern European countries as well in order to gain.